Commander Zara looked down at the human prisoner with disgust. The small pale creature sat quietly in the center of the arena, while thousands of Vorthak warriors filled the massive stadium. Their purple skin gleamed under the bright lights as they roared with laughter. The human had been captured 3 days ago when his tiny ship crashed on their homeworld. He carried only basic supplies and one strange metal object that looked like a simple hammer. Zara had studied humans for years and knew they were considered the weakest species in the galaxy. High Admiral Crick stood beside her on the viewing platform, his forearms crossed as he spoke in their native tongue. This will be entertaining. The human thinks his primitive tool can help him survive, our champion. Zara nodded. But something felt wrong about this whole situation. The human, whose name was apparently Jake, showed no fear. His calm blue eyes scanned the arena with careful attention. She had interrogated many prisoners before, and they always showed terror when facing certain death. The arena floor opened and their champion emerged. Gorlak the Destroyer stood 12 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and armor plating covering his massive frame. He had never lost a battle. In over 50 contests, the crowd went wild as he flexed his powerful muscles. Jake stood up slowly and picked up his simple hammer. The tool looked tiny in comparison to Gorlak's massive war axes. The human was barely 6 feet tall and weighed maybe 200 pounds, while their champion was over 800 pounds of pure muscle. Admiral Crix activated the arena's communication system. Human, you have insulted our people by trespassing on sacred ground. You will now face our greatest warrior. If you somehow survive, you will be granted freedom, but no alien has ever defeated Gorlak. Jake nodded and stepped forward. The crowd's laughter grew louder as they saw his pathetic weapon. Many Vorthaks were placing bets on how quickly the human would die. Some said 30 seconds, while others believed he might last a full minute. Zara found herself leaning forward as the battle horn sounded. Gorlak charged across the arena floor with incredible speed. His massive feet created small earthquakes. With each step, Jake remained perfectly still until the last possible moment. Then something impossible happened. The human moved faster than any creature Zara had ever seen. He rolled to the side as Gorlak's claws swept through empty air. The hammer in Jake's hand began to glow with a strange blue energy that made the arena's lights seem dim. Gorlak turned and swung his war axes in a deadly combination. But Jake was no longer there. The human had somehow jumped 15 feet into the air and landed behind the champion. The glowing hammer struck Gorlak's armor with a sound like thunder. The massive warrior stumbled forward as cracks appeared in his supposedly indestructible plating. The crowd fell silent for the first time in arena history. Admiral Crix's 4 eyes widened in shock as he gripped the platform railing. That is impossible. Human weapons cannot penetrate Vorthak battle armor. Zara felt her hearts racing as she watched the fight continue. Gorlak spun around with fury in his yellow eyes, but Jake was already moving again. The human's simple hammer seemed to be getting brighter with each passing second. The champion unleashed his most powerful attack, sending energy beams from his chest cannon. Jake raised his hammer and the beams simply bounced off the glowing metal tool. They struck the arena walls and melted solid rock like it was ice cream. Now the crowd was murmuring in fear rather than excitement. Several younger warriors in the stands began backing toward the exits. This was not going according to their plans. Jake pressed his advantage and began attacking with incredible precision. Each strike from his hammer created more cracks in Gorlak's armor. The champion tried to grab the human with his massive claws, but Jake moved like liquid mercury. Within minutes, the impossible became reality. Gorlak the Destroyer fell to his knees as his armor completely shattered. The champion, who had never been defeated, was now helpless before a human with a simple tool. The stadium fell into complete silence except for Gorlak's heavy breathing. Jake stood over the fallen champion but did not deliver a killing blow. Instead, he stepped back and waited. Admiral Crix's voice shook as he spoke over the communication system. This cannot be real. Human technology is primitive compared to our advanced civilization. How can a simple metal tool defeat our greatest warrior? Jake looked up at the viewing platform and smiled. He raised his hammer high above his head, and the blue glow intensified until it lit up the entire arena. This is not just a tool, Admiral. This is a fragment of a neutron star forged in the heart of a dying sun. Humans have learned to harness the power of collapsed matter. Your champion fought, bravely, but he was fighting against the compressed gravity of an entire world. Zara felt her legs go weak as the truth sank in. The humans had not just mastered space travel, they had learned to weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe itself. That simple hammer contained more destructive power than their entire fleet. The crowd began to panic as they realized what this meant. If one human with one weapon could defeat their champion, what could a human army accomplish? Admiral Crix ordered an immediate evacuation of the arena. Jake calmly walked to the center of the floor and set his hammer down. The weapon's glow faded until it looked like an ordinary tool. Once again, he sat cross-legged and waited patiently for someone to approach. Zara found herself walking down to the arena floor against all common sense. Something about the human fascinated her beyond simple curiosity. When she reached the bottom, Jake looked up and smiled again. "You do not seem afraid like the others." She struggled to find words in the human language before finally speaking. "Your people are far more advanced than we believed. Why do you hide your true capabilities?" Jake picked up his hammer and stood slowly as he considered her question. "We do not hide anything, Commander Zara. We simply do not feel the need to prove our strength to every species we encounter. Most problems can be solved with patience and understanding rather than violence." Her name recognition startled her, since she had never introduced herself. Jake noticed her surprise and chuckled softly. "Your military records are quite detailed, Commander. You have studied human behavior for 7 years and written over 40 reports about our supposed weaknesses." Zara felt heat rising in her cheeks, which was the Vorthak equivalent of blushing. Those reports were based on incomplete information. Jake nodded and began walking toward the arena exit. "Most first impressions are, Commander. Your people assumed that simple tools meant simple minds. That is a dangerous mistake to make about any species." As they reached the exit, Zara called out to him. "What happens now? Will your people come for revenge?" Jake paused and turned back to face her commander. "There are over 6 billion humans in this galaxy, and every one of them carries tools just as advanced as this hammer. We could have conquered your world centuries ago if that was our goal. Instead, we prefer to explore and learn from other cultures." The implications of his words hit her like a physical blow. Humanity was not just another spacefaring species. They were potentially the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy, and they had chosen to remain hidden. Your ship that crashed, was it really an accident? Jake smiled one final time before disappearing into the corridor beyond. "What do you think?" Commander Zara stood alone in the empty arena as the lights began to dim. She realized that everything her people believed about humans was completely wrong. They were not weak primitives, struggling to survive in a hostile galaxy. They were sleeping giants who had chosen not to reveal their true strength. The simple hammer had taught the Vorthaks a lesson that would reshape their understanding of the universe forever. Never judge a species by the simplicity of their tools.